Today on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Boat owner Taylor Mason aims to make his dream of reef fishing in the Florida Keys a reality.
The ability to bring the boat down to the Keys would really be something special.
Florida Sportsman boating editor Dave East heads out with Tony Eden to discuss the customization of his 24-foot Pathfinder, designed for sight fishing cobia and tripletail.
I really like what you've done. The boat really looks like it's got a purpose. Performed well, you did a great job.
And we meet up with the experts at Birdsall Marine Design to have a custom T-top built for the 25-foot Hydra-Sports project. All coming up on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat.
All right, so we've got a 23 Seacraft here at the shop that we've been working on, closing transom in. We're gonna add an Armstrong bracket, a couple of 4-stroke Yamahas. It belongs to a gentleman that lives out in Texas. It's a family boat that his dad bought years ago, and they've kept it up in New York, and we're fishing it up there. The family bought a condo down in Ocean Reef, Florida. They're thinking about moving the boat down there, but they don't know yet what they wanna do. They've got some ideas. They know the boat needs to be modified to work for them. They've looked at some new boats, and they just don't see what they really want that's out there that's available. So Taylor, the owner of the boat, has done some research. He's been talking to people. He found out there's places that do what we do and customize the boat around the individual's needs and what they want to do to the boat. So that being said, he got in touch with me on the phone and we discussed a bunch of things back and forth. And I'm sure we can make this boat exactly what he wants.
So when I was a young teenager, my dad wanted to spend more time with his kids. My brother's about 2 years younger than I am. And so we bought this boat back in the late 90s. We used it pretty well for, call it 6 to 8 years, out in Long Island in the Shinnecock Bay. And I graduated college, I moved away. My brother graduated college, he moved away. And the family just didn't use the boat as much as we should have. And so it ended up being dry docked for a number of years. And then just kind of left, for lack of a better term, I guess, fall apart. And a couple years ago, my parents bought this property down in South Florida. And we spent some time thinking about, wouldn't it be great to have a boat down there, period? Could we make this boat work? Was it in too bad shape? Did it make more sense to start from the beginning and go ahead and buy another boat or try and bring this one back to life? And so we ultimately decided it made sense to try and bring this boat back to life. And so we went through the process of understanding what had to happen to it and the right guy to kind of help us through what for us would be a pretty complicated process. If we were going to bring this boat back to life, we wanted to make sure it was going to be the right boat for this area. And so we wanted things like a good live well in the stern we could use for everything from ballyhoo to other baits for yellowtail to keeping shrimp alive. We wanted to upgrade to modern 4-stroke power. And the boat originally had a pair of older Mercury F-150s on it back in the late 90s. We wanted those off. We wanted to go with Yamaha because our local people here service them, and we have a bunch of friends who love those motors. But in doing so, we were going to put a bunch more weight in the back of the boat. And it was already a boat that, the way it floated, had about as much weight in the stern that we were comfortable with. And so we decided the best option would probably be some kind of bracket, whether it was a fiberglass bracket or an Armstrong bracket or something else like that. Did our research, spoke to Armstrong as well. They're one of the people who recommended Brian, actually, and kind of went off to the races on everything else that needed to happen. So I've always loved the water, and I've always loved being down here. And it really was always a dream of mine to be able to have something in the northern Keys that we could be able to get out and get on the reef and on calm days get offshore and really just bomb around and have a great time with friends, family, everything else. And so the ability to bring the boat down to the Keys would really be something special, and it really would be kind of a childhood dream come true.
So the main idea that Taylor had was closing in the back of the boat, because when they would go fishing for sea bass and things like that in New York, they would stand in the back of the boat, they would take a bunch of water on, the live well was down in the floor of the boat, They'd have to get down on their knees to dig down to get the baits out. He didn't like any of those things. So by closing in the transom and raising the live well up high, we were able to cut out the old live well on the floor and make that our bilge access. You've got way more room to get down inside the bilge to work on your pumps and your valves to access those things. And then you have a live well now that's up above the floor. You don't have to get down on your knees to get access to it. He's gonna really like this. Plus it seals off the whole back of the boat and he doesn't have any more water coming over the transom when they're in rough seas and things like that. We did a preliminary investigation of the boat to oversee it because Taylor's ideas were close the transom, mount a bracket, put some motors on, send it down the road. It doesn't always work that way. This boat was sitting in a high and dry for the last couple of years, not being used. As soon as the boat got here from New York, the first inspection we did was the wiring. The wiring was bad. There must have been some rats living in there because there was chewed wires, things were pulled apart. He couldn't have ran the boat if he wanted to, and I don't think he had any clue about that. So I'm gonna have to make a phone call to him, let him know about his wiring need to be redone. His electronics, he knew he was gonna update some things, but I don't think he realized everything just needs to be ripped out of this boat and it needs to go back brand new.
When we return, the crew at MCU installs a custom electronics package on the 23-foot Seacraft project. This segment brought to you by JL Audio. How we play.
At Yamaha, reliability is a family tradition. Meet the next generation. 4 new advanced technology-inspired inline 4-cylinder performers. Bred from the reliability and boater satisfaction that is part of Yamaha's DNA. They prove that when power gets lighter, faster, stronger, and smarter, boating gets even better. And more satisfying for boaters like you.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. With the 23-foot Seacraft at MCU, the crew begins with installing a custom electronics package, including a new bottom machine for reef and wreck fishing.
All right, so after talking to Taylor about his 23-foot Seacraft, with the wiring problem that we found, the rat's nest, all the tore up wiring, he's made the decision to go ahead with repainting the T-top, putting the new Garmin electronics in, and rewiring the complete boat. Now that Taylor's boat's gonna be tailored to his needs with these electronics for the bottom fishing and stuff that he's gonna do down in the Keys, I need to get Steve in the boat and get the rigging process going, because we need to get this boat on the water.
Yeah, we're working on this 23 Seacraft. Fortunately for me, I had an empty shell of a boat, so I didn't have to really worry too much about my layout because I could put stuff where I want it instead of having to work around stuff, especially when you're doing an electronics installation in a boat that's already rigged. You've got to get in there and you've got to figure out where you're going to mount everything before you just start mounting it, because a lot of times you have to, you know, a depth finder box, and then you've got the fuse panel a lot of times you've got to install, and then you've got the backbone you got to install. But fortunately for this one, I had an empty shell and I pretty well laid everything out ahead of time in my mind, because of course we have no blueprints doing this stuff. Then usually what I like doing is getting all the units mounted, get the transducer mounted, getting the antenna mounted, and then I do all my wiring at the last step. I started wiring up the dash, installing the Garmin electronics. They've come a long ways. Really everything's plug and play now. You know, they simplified it, especially with the new backbone system in it. So the old NEMA 183, where you got to tie everything into an input and an output. Now it's got a NEMA 2000 backbone. Everything plugs into that. It all communicates with each other, and it's real simple. The hardest part about that is planning your installation. You know, depending if sometimes you got an autopilot radar and everything, you got to sit down ahead of time and just start mapping it out where you're going to lay it in your mind first. And when it's that situation, then you can really make that console look really nice. I've seen consoles that look like a hairdresser was in there weaving the wiring. You know, I pulled more wiring out of boats that were not needed. And as I showed you when we were rigging the Garmin stuff, a lot of times I took and I shortened some stuff. Some of the power wires that you can shorten as long as you refuse them, and you can make the wiring look a lot neater, a lot nicer. You know, you open it up and it looks like a road map in there instead of a rat's nest. In this small Seacraft console, you know, it's pretty tight. Sometimes you're going to say a few bad words, you know, you're going to get frustrated because a lot of times you got to work with one hand, and a lot of times you can't get both hands in there. along with your head so you can see what you're doing. You know, I have to lay on my back, I have to lay on my sides, you know, and but I've done it a long time, so I'm used to it. You know, I've worked in a lot smaller consoles and I've worked in a lot bigger ones. I go home with bruises, I go home with cuts from zip ties that the factory did not cut back properly with good flush cut, you know, side cutters. They just go in there and whack them off with regular side cutters, and them little tip that they leave on it is like a razor blade. It'll slice you open. I give blood on a daily basis. Yeah, I do. Look at my arms, you know, they're all chewed up. So when I do a nice clean rigging console, when you go in there and check my zip ties, they're not gonna cut you. And try to use as less as possible. A lot of times you're gonna use 30 tie wraps just to get stuff started, but then you're gonna go back and end up cutting a lot of them out once you got everything traced out, lined up how you want it. A lot of times you gotta run a wire, well, it don't look correct like that, don't look good, I'm gonna, okay, get rid of it and run it this way. But you know, I use electrical grease in all my connectors, you know, I use nothing but heat shrink connectors. And not only making it look nice, it makes it easier for if you have to go in and troubleshoot a problem, which may occur down the road, instead of just looking at a big bundle of wires and wondering what goes where, you know, everything's mapped out. It looks like a road map almost, you know.
All right, so I've got Steve wrapping up the electronics and the wiring in the 23 Seacraft that we're doing for Taylor. As soon as he's done with that, we're gonna get to the transom of the boat because I've got to measure it out for its new bracket.
When we come back, FS Boating editor Dave East heads out with Tony Eden to discuss the customization of his 24-foot Pathfinder. This segment brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here.
At Yamaha, reliability is a family tradition. Meet the next generation. 4 new advanced technology-inspired inline 4-cylinder performers. Bred from the reliability and boater satisfaction that is part of Yamaha's DNA. They prove that when power gets lighter, faster, stronger, and smarter, boating gets even better. And more satisfying for boaters like you.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join us during this one man's Dreamboat ride-along, where we feature boats and their owners whose dreams have already become reality. FS Boating editor Dave East meets with Tony Eden to discuss the customization of his 24-foot Pathfinder, designed for sight fishing cobia and tripletail.
Tony, thank you so much for taking me out on your boat. I really like what you've done. Everything to the boat really looks like it's got a purpose. All the modifications that you've done, and you're a little bit different than our other guys that are doing Dreamboat projects because you're kind of a veteran at this. This is your second project, right?
Yeah, it's the second project, but it's also what I do for a living as far as, you know, the rigging of the boat. I don't do the fiberglass or the paint or the canvas or any of that stuff, but I work with a team of professionals day in and day out that does all of those things. So, you know, it's kind of just another day. I did do it piece by piece. It wasn't something like we had a big, huge budget and threw money and got it all done. You know, it's kind of we built it as time and money allowed and kind of got it how we wanted to get it.
Well, it ended up saving you a lot of money, but in the end, too, you ended up with the boat exactly the way you wanted it. You've got your tower, you've got your sea deck on the back. I see how you've modified your console.
When we got the boat, you know, it wouldn't even get on plane. The motor had problems. It wasn't taken care of, but we had the mechanic go through the motor, and I've spent a whole entire day scraping the barnacles off the bottom of it. We eventually, you know, wet sanded the whole thing, buffed it, waxed it, and then we started attacking the inside of the boat.
Well, if we break down some of the major modifications, the first thing that stands out obviously is a tower that you talked about earlier. And you do obviously a lot of sight fishing for cobia. You want to be higher.
The design that we went with has a few advantages that I felt like over adding a second station. One, to make it where it would flip down completely out of the way. So there's, you know, just a couple of connections on top of the T-top that are a few inches tall and that it connects to. Besides that, it's level with the T-top when it flips down. So we can go under low bridges or when I'm trailering the boat.
And to have the boat prepped prior to having that tower built was really, really smart, because you do get a lot of moment and the boat's going to have a lot of force against it. So to reinforce it first, knowing that you're doing the tower later, I think that was a really smart move. I love the sea deck. Being out on the water in this, today, and being able to walk on that sea deck, and it was quiet. Man, what an improvement just that one modification did to that boat.
Yeah, we really like it. Like you said, it's soft, it reduces fatigue. The biggest thing for us when we're fishing is it increases traction. It makes the boat way quieter, and it makes the boat safer for my daughter to be on when she's running around in tornado mode like you saw out here earlier.
Right.
She wasn't on the boat 5 minutes and she fell over, onto her back on the sea deck, and she jumped right up because there's nothing to scratch or nothing to hurt you.
Right. I like the way you did your underwater lights as well, because most of the boats, they use LEDs, and they'll put like 2 in the transom. I've yet to see a boat this small put lights forward, and I think it's a great idea, because at night, at rest, when you have all those lights on, instead of having 2 little lights pointing out the back, man, you've lit up the whole bottom of the boat.
We eventually are hoping to go all the way around the boat, but I really knew I wanted to get some lights in the front of the boat. You basically see flounder gigging boats with their adjustable lights in the water and stuff, and I thought, man, if we put some underwater lights in the front of this boat, we could light this thing up like crazy and just have a blast with it.
I like the way you did your wiring too, because you look in your bilge, it was really, really clean. The way you've got it laid out, all your wires are different colors, your bus bar is in the back. You look underneath your console, it's the cleanest installation that I've seen on wiring. That was a smart move.
I just wanted to make everything as user-friendly and serviceable as possible. I wanted to make the whole electrical system where it would always be easily upgradable. If I wanted anything that I wanted to add, there would always be an extra wire and circuit already there already labeled, already in place, so the actual harness in the boat would never have to be compromised again.
Well, if you've inspired anybody that's watching this episode to take on a project like this, and you could give them some advice, what would that advice be if somebody said, okay, you know what, I like what he did, I want to do this myself?
I think just trying to be honest, it's always going to take way more time and way more money than you ever think it's going to take.
Right.
But it's a dream. You just want to hit it one piece at a time if you have to, with the whole large concept of where you want to take the boat in the long run in mind. One thing that really makes me feel good about the whole project, the way we did it, and a piece at a time and all that is, total with the boat that I traded for this one and all the work that we did on it, on both boats, I'm out less than $30,000 for the whole entire project. And to get the same hull comparatively rigged or so, you'd be looking at 3 times the price.
Well, I know that big bull red that you caught today had no idea what kind of boat he was being caught out of, but I guarantee you the fishermen inside the boat knew what boat they were in, and it was comfortable, it performed well, you did a great job.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, it was a pleasure doing the whole project, and glad you guys had me.
After trading his flats boat valued at $18,000 and adding $10,000 in custom modifications, the cost of Tony's Dreamboat comes to a total of $28,000. When we come back, we head to Birdsall Marine Design for the fabrication of a custom T-top for the 25-foot Hydra-Sports project.
This segment brought to you by Garmin. Fight your fish, not your fish finder.
Panoptics, the newest product out there from Garmin, and it's going to revolutionize fishing. What blows my mind about this technology is you can see fish out in front of you, not what's behind you or what you've already went over, but what's coming up. And then to see fish and to know if they're moving towards your baits or away from your baits, or if they're moving left or right. It's amazing what it's going to do for our fish catching.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat.
With a 25-foot Hydra-Sports in the rigging stage, we head to Birdsall Marine Design for the fabrication of a custom T-top.
So now that we've got the 25 Hydra-Sport all painted and wrapped up, it's ready for rigging. Steve's excited, he's anxious, he wants to get rolling with it. But before Steve can get started, we've got to get the T-top in the boat. I put Rick in touch with Bobby Birdsall to go over the different ideas and things like that. He was on the website looking at photos and pictures. He's excited about the chair with the live well in the back, but he really needed to talk to Bob. Once they talked, Bob threw out some really great ideas. So this boat's going ice blue, Matterhorn white and everything. Weblon, the fabric material that goes on the top, they actually have a two-tone color where there's blue on the bottom, white on the top. It's gonna look really sharp when it's done, especially going with the double bow top that Birdsall does. It just enhances the look, it gives some beef look to the top, and it really comes out nice when it's all finished and put together with all the hardware on the boat.
To begin the fabrication process of a custom top from Birdsall Marine Design, the details of the boat and needs of the customer must first be collected. Once the boat arrives, the center and overhang measurements above the console are taken to create the dimensions for the portion of the top that provides shade. The top section is built first, using only anodized marine-grade aluminum piping. The canvas is also measured and prepared during this process. The structural support of the top, the legs, are built directly off the console of the boat. The aluminum piping is bent to the proper shape by a pipe bender and tacked together by a MIG welder. This structure is then lifted off the boat and welded together permanently, using precise movement and speed. A rigger then begins the final assembly of the top. Wiring is pulled through the tubing for lighting and any additional electronics mounted to the top. Then, the rigger pulls the canvas tight to the top and laces it to the piping before being lowered back down onto the boat. Once in place, the pads of the top are secured to the console with stainless steel screws and marine-grade caulking. The piping is shined to a glossy finish and protected with an application of marine-grade wax. Once the top is installed, the boat is ready to be transported back to MCU for further rigging.
So after receiving the 25 Hydra-Sport back from Birdsall, now you're starting to look at this boat, it's coming together. The top's on, the chair's in, it's really coming, it's completed almost, except for the fact that the bracket doesn't have an engine on the back. Rick made a decision on the 30-inch 300, the motor was ordered. As soon as it gets here, we'll be able to get it on the back of the boat. This thing's gonna be ready for the water sooner than we think. All right, guys, so a couple episodes back, I purchased a Sea Hunt from one of my customers who smashed a piling with it. He got a big insurance check, and he wasn't looking for much more in his pocket, so I paid him a little bit of money for the boat. I ended up fixing it up myself. We painted the hull, we redid the interior, fixed a couple odds ends on the boat, found a buyer down in Marathon. It was only on the market for about 2 weeks. They drove all the way up here, saw the boat, sight unseen, paid a deposit right away. They loved it. They asked me to throw in a couple extras. I'm not gonna haggle. I'm gonna take care of it for them on the house, seeing how they paid me in full. Didn't negotiate the price at all, because I put about a $20,000 profit in my pocket on this job, and I'm real happy.
Next time on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. The bracket and engine are bolted onto the 23-foot Seacraft after some time-robbing challenges, making way for FS Boating editor Dave East to join owner Taylor Mason in putting its fishing capability to the test out of Ocean Reef, Florida. Also, the 25-foot Hydra-Sports build is in full swing, with the engine and trim tabs being mounted and installed.
Each month, turn to Florida Sportsman for the best in boating and fishing coverage.